Good morning and welcome to this morning's meeting of the Indiana State Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council. My name is Chris Goff. I serve as an Associate Justice on the Indiana Supreme Court, and I've also been designated by Chief Justice Loretta Rush to serve as Chair of State JRAC. I hope everyone has stayed safe and relatively warm through this week's weather, and I'm glad that everyone could join us this morning. The first item of business is approval of the minutes from the January 14th, 2022 JRAC meeting. A copy of those minutes should have been distributed to all JRAC members or their designees prior to this morning's meeting. At this time, if there's no questions or discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
This is Doug. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you. So there is a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes from January 14th. Any further discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, the meeting minutes from the January 14th, 2022 State JRAC meeting will stand approved as presented. The next item of business this morning is a report out from the JRAC work groups. And the first report out will come from Michael Moore on the racial equity work group. And Michael is making a report out on behalf of co-chairs Bernice Corley and Steve Luce. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Justice Goff. Just need 1 second. So Bernice wanted to let everybody know that the racial equity work group is still continuing to prepare for the racial equity research project with Dr. Louder. The project solicitation letter was sent on January 21st to Bartholomew, Grant, Hamilton, Hendricks, Merriam, Monroe, Porter, and Vigo counties. And the deadline for those counties to express interest is February the 18th. Following this, the work group will select 3 or 4 of those counties to move forward with the project and plan for the next steps of collecting and reviewing data with Dr. Evan Louder. We have already received positive response from 2 counties which are interested in participating in the research project. And during 2022, this work group will meet every other month, with the next meeting taking place in February, on February 15th to be exact. And during this meeting, the group will have opportunity to hear from Troy Hatfield regarding work currently occurring in Monroe County to address equity concerns. And Bernice wanted to share that she looks forward to starting the research project and moving forward with that group.
Michael, thank you for that update. Are there any questions from members or designees concerning the report? Well, hearing none, Michael, please accept my thanks on behalf of my colleagues and all of the JRAC members for the work that's going on in the work group. We really appreciate it and glad to hear that things are moving as you indicated. The next report out will come from the JRAC Indiana Evidence-Based Decision-Making and Local JRAC Work Group. I'm going to just real quickly preview what Angie's going to do a much job of updating you on. And this work group has been very busy and it continues to be busy developing technical assistance for our local JRACs as they come online. We've appreciated receiving assistance ourselves in that process from Mimi Carter, who's joining us today, and her group. We have developed a series, so far 2, but there is in the works a third webinar that's designed to let local JRACs understand what the purpose of the JRAC group is, provide them with some information about how best to structure their local groups, and moreover, to give them some ideas about how they could implement change targets in their communities and really use some of the resources that are coming up on a hub that is our local JRAC website as a one-stop shop for their criminal justice improvement needs. One of the things I'm really excited about is that many of us on the call have been working on developing plans for a statewide summit that will address issues relating to court and community response to persons with serious mental illness and co-occurring disorders. And our thought is that as we develop our local JRACs, that this summit will provide a great launch pad for our local groups to really tackle an issue that is pervasive throughout not only Indiana, but the entire nation. And those efforts are going to be coinciding with a national rollout of the 988 suicide prevention hotline. So there are many people on the call today that are working on that. It's a huge project, but I think that our approach to it is really exciting, and it's going to be a leader nationally in the way to successfully implement that wonderful new resource. Angie, can you please update the group on some of the more some of the details of the work that you've been doing with your group?
Sure. Thank you, Justice Goff. Our last meeting was held virtually on January 19th. The state JRAC members were included recently. You may have seen that in an email that I sent out to local JRAC chairs and their point of contacts on the 27th of January. And this email had several updates, including the opportunity to ask for technical assistance for local JRACs if they haven't completed their annual report yet. Those are due the end of March, but they can also now request different types of technical assistance depending upon their needs. We've received one request so far, and then, thankfully for our partnership with Mimi Carter and the Center for Effective Public Policy, Mimi helped develop the questions and options that we can offer. So we'll see how that goes and what people are asking for. So Grant County has also agreed to help with an instructional video on completing the annual report, and we've been meeting on that recently. The link to access the annual report and to complete it is on the local JRAC website, as well as a printable version of the entire form that can be distributed to council members in advance of meeting to fill it out. We've received 9 reports so far. Those will be used to help develop the technical assistance options that we're working with CEPP on developing. So also, a local JRAC action plan template was provided by Mimi and her group, and that was included in the email that we sent out. That is to aid local JRACs as they complete their annual report, gathering information, and when they identify action items or targets that need to be addressed in the future, then they can document it that way, make sure that they don't forget anything in the future and can address those. We also now have a local JRAC directory that is live and on the website that you may have seen. So as those updates come in, as people are responding or starting to meet, we're adding those to the directory. A lot of people have that I've talked to recently have meetings scheduled in February. So that I should be hearing more throughout the month on those. So let's see. There's also a link on the website. So if there are changes to the leadership, specifically the chair, vice chair, and point of contact for the county, then they can make those electronically now and fill out the update form, and we can change those on the directory sooner than later. So under the training and resources section of the website, we do have the 2 previous webinars that were hosted by the state JRAC from November 1st and December 15th. So those are viewable for anyone that comes on to the website. There's also a link for the EBDM starter kit that was added to the website and provides guidance and activities for policy teams to outline a common core set of activities designed to encourage or advance system alignment. This we thought would be a good resource for counties that are trying to figure out how to get the policy teams developed and in place. And then lastly, the links on the website we've just added are the grant opportunities, including the DMHA Community Coordination Grant and then Problem Solving Court grants that we have on there. So our next meeting is February 16th, and it will be held virtually. That's all I have.
Angie, thank you for the update. Thank you to you, your team, and everybody else on the call who's helped roll out our technical assistance package and to develop it. This work is really developing into some of the most instrumental work that I think JRAC is involved in. I wonder, are there any questions from members or their designees for Angie or the team before we move on? Well, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on the agenda and appreciate that update. I think we're ready to move on to item 4 then on our agenda, and that is the legislative update. So I know the legislature has been very busy. Senator Pohl, I thank you for your attendance today. I know this is a very busy time of year for you. Are there any updates to Senate Bill?
You broke up just a little bit there, Justice Goff. I heard, are there any updates to Senate? And then you cut out.
Okay. Are you able to hear me now? I'm getting a prompt that my internet connection is unstable. I apologize.
That's okay.
I meant to say, Senator, if it didn't come through, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Appreciate the work that you and your colleagues went into crafting this legislation that I think is really going to help a lot. Mary Kay, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, you just split up just a little bit there. I heard, it's like right when you're getting to the meat of it, you said crafting the legislation. Was there particular legislation that you were referring to?
Well, with the local JRAC, I just want to thank you in particular for the work that you and your colleagues did last year. I think it's proved very helpful, and I think it's going to continue to prove helpful to our communities in the future. So thank you, Senator.
I wish I could take credit for that. This is my first session, so I wasn't here for last year, but I am familiar with the legislation. So yes, yeah, and I'm really excited to continue to help JRAC in any way we can from the legislature and beyond. So
we're glad you're here. Thank you. Well, Mary Kay, in the event that I break up again, I wanted to go ahead and start our discussion on the legislative update. I know that you had an item that you wanted to share, and then once you're done, I just open that up to any members that want to share legislative items of particular interest to our group. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Goff. There's just one bill. I know there's lots of bills that this group is interested in, but one in particular is Senate Bill 9, and that is Senator Walker's bill on electronic monitoring standards. There was an amendment filed on that bill that was adopted, and it may have been in the committee that you sit on, Senator Pohl, and the Corrections and Criminal Law, that does direct local jurisdictions to submit information regarding electronic monitoring, use of electronic monitoring to their local JRAC on a quarterly basis. And then in turn, the local JRACs are supposed to submit that information to the Legislative Council and to state JRAC. So I just bring that up because I think there's probably other portions of that bill that some of us are interested in, but that in particular does have an impact on local JRACs as well as state JRACs. So we're just going to continue to watch that. There is currently a requirement for counties to report use of home detention, which includes home detention with electronic monitoring and without electronic monitoring. So I think we'll take a look at that just to make sure that, in the event that the bill passes as is and includes that requirement to report to local JRAC, that we are not duplicating efforts at the local level. Because we've been collecting that home detention report for quite a long time, and that report is actually something that we are directed to publish, and that's on our website. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
Well, thank you, Mary Kay. Anything further on this subject? And if not, any other legislative updates from any members or designees?
Justice Goff.
Hearing none. Yeah, please, Judge Spitzer. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. So, I think there are a number of bills that are being proposed with regards to pretrial, and I know we're going to talk about pretrial some more, I think today. I think and as you know, I chair the pretrial committee, and then I'm also a representative on this body of IJA, the Judges Association. And some of those bills have had some amendments and things like that to, kind of make them a little more palatable than they were before. But generally, I have a concern that there are local issues that are leading to statewide bills that are going to have a statewide impact on pretrial, and particularly our efforts with regards to evidence-based pretrial. And I think that those we should resist that inclination to legislate statewide for local issues. I think, and Senator Paul, we talked about that a little bit, that we've enacted this local JRAC system so that we can deal with these local issues. Those are just kind of coming online. Everybody's getting their local JRACs organized. And so, I'd love to see those have an opportunity to work and become effective before we start sort of piecemealing legislation that's really going to impact pretrial. From a Judges Association perspective, we always have concerns about legislation that impacts our judicial discretion when we're making decisions. A lot of pretrial obviously is about sort of making best decisions about what might happen in the future. And the famous philosopher Yogi Berra said it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. And so, I think that the way that you can make better predictions about how people might act in the future is by getting better information to judges and then allowing them to make good decisions within their discretion. And a lot of these bills don't allow for that. So that's a matter of concern. Frankly, a lot of them have the fingerprints of bail bondsmen on them, and are ways to sort of advantage their financial position with regards to their role in the cash bail system. Again, we're in Indiana, we've been sort of moving away from that simply because that's not the best way to make sure that dangerous people are not out, and that poor people are not kept in jail simply because they're poor. And so, there are some efforts that are moving forward to do to really improve the pretrial system, and allowing that sort of to play out is, I think, something that's, as we're all, sort of discussing how we do that, I think would be great, rather than sort of piecemeal legislation. So I guess that's my concerns that I have with regards to a lot of this legislation that relates to bail.
Thank you. Thank you for those observations, Judge. And I think that your observation about what the local JRAC system will do to allow various stakeholders within our local justice systems to share common knowledge about the issues that are really the most important in their community is an important one. Are there any? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Can somebody speak?
Justice Goff, I just wanted to add to that. I want to thank Judge Spitzer for that. Yeah, that was definitely one of my concerns as it pertained to some of the Marion County bills was, in particular, the violent arrestee, bail issue, or the bail bill. The idea that it was looking at what was being called a Marion County issue, and kind of addressing that statewide, and removing a lot of the discretion that the local jurisdiction would have as it pertains to pretrial, other pretrial issues. I do intend to, just so the group is aware of this, I do intend to file an amendment to House Bill 1004, which is coming to the Corrections Committee. With that, it would change, it would essentially do away with the credit time P designation for home detention and treat that similar to normal credit time for individuals that do enter into a home detention order, pretrial order. The reason being for that is to ensure that individuals aren't kept necessarily unnecessarily too long in the system, and that hopefully that that's something that at the local level you would have both the flexibility and the discretion with the at the local jurisdiction to address what they believe are issues on a more specific and a more case-by-case situation. But other than that, one of the other things I did want to mention, I wanted to thank Andy Cullen for his work and his support for Senate Bill 308, which did make it out of corrections, but I don't think made it out of appropriations, which was a bill that had pertained to the reimbursement of public defenders. I'm hoping that there's some appetite for that to still make its way through the legislature, because I did think it was a good bill. Other than that, I guess the only other bill that I would, and I'm not sure if this is necessarily in the purview of JRAC, but it was one that did concern me, was Senate Bill 143, which included language as it pertained to reasonable force. And it concerned me, given the fact that it essentially, seemingly, I think the intent was to codify common law, but I do think that it goes beyond that. I've had a conversation with Senator Young following a debate on the Senate floor on third reading, just in describing how that bill would essentially, I think, confuse a lot of individuals as it pertained to what when their ability was to effectuate an arrest with the loaded handgun. So it is something that I do think we, outside of the idea of pretrial issues, it is something that is very concerning to me. And I think that after the debate, there was definitely some concern to amend that bill as it gets over to the House side. So.
Well, again,
If
thank
I
you for.
understand, I'm sorry, Justice Goff. If I
No, go
understand,
ahead.
Senator, your proposal is that we would taking away that P with regards to pretrial home detention would restore to the judges the discretion whether or not to award pretrial or good time credit for time spent during pretrial. Is that how I understand it?
Well, right now I think it's 4 for 1
Yeah.
with pretrial, which was I think the creation of it was, I think it came out of a Senate bill originally a while back, and I think the 4 for 1 was just a very, very long time for pretrial detention, particularly given the fact that the longer individuals stay in the system, the longer the more likely it is that they will. Or the higher the rate of recidivism. And so it was essentially, the amendment would restore that back to what the original, I guess what the original credit time would be, which is treated as if they were detained, in the local jail.
I don't see that we would have any issue with that. So.
Any other discussion on this topic? I don't want to cut off discussion, but when we have a break, I want to acknowledge that I'm told by April that Representative Hatcher has joined us. And Representative Hatcher, if you can hear me, ma'am, we are at that point in the meeting where we're asking for legislative updates. So if there's anything that you'd like to add, we'd welcome the opportunity to hear from you. If not, then that's fine as well. But good morning.
Good morning. I am sorry, I hate my background today. I'm at home because of the weather.
Well, most of us are.
I'm not sure if everybody has heard about the bill that's coming through. I don't know, and I apologize for being a few minutes late. I had another call at 8 o'clock, but I'm not sure if everybody heard about the bail bill, if we've talked about that already. This is the bill regarding the inability for nonprofit organizations to be able to bail out people who have had either a violent felony or I think any felony at all. I think right now it's written as they can only bail out misdemeanors and non-violent misdemeanors. And also there's a bill coming from the Senate, Senate Bill 6. I don't know if Senator Polis talked about this one or not, but Senate Bill 6 says that only a close relative can bail somebody out on a violent offense. And so both of those, the one in the House is passed the House and on the way to the Senate. I'm not sure what happened with Senate Bill 6 though, but that's probably the most concerning one that I've seen, only because it limits the ability for outside people to be able to bail somebody out, a family friend, or even a non-close family relative, because they're defining it as an immediate family member. And I think the problem has been, well, the problem that they're saying has been because historically there's been some times where violent people have been bailed out and they go on to do additional violent things. I think that our position in the House, at least in the Democrat caucus, is that there's an ability to stop bail, first of all, if it's a violent offense. The judge doesn't have to grant bail for violent offenses. And then secondly, if they do, it can be high enough where whoever bails them out has a real interest or stake in that person returning to court or not violating the probation in the meantime. So I think out of all the bills that I've seen come through, I mean, there's been some bad ones, but I think this one is the most concerning because it stops the ability of the nonprofits to be able to bail.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Hatcher. That specific aspect of the legislation had not been discussed, but just before you joined, there was a concern raised by the Indiana Judges Association that some legislation that's being considered might take away local discretion and might be in response to local issues that would have a statewide impact. And the one thing I guess I try to remind folks when I'm discussing this issue, because JRAC and the judiciary ends up largely responsible for educating judicial officers, probation officers on how to implement pretrial releases, that we've developed a certification process for counties when they're looking at their pretrial practices. Judge Spitzer, who's here on behalf of the Indiana Judges Association, chairs that multidisciplinary conference committee, the judicial conference that includes IPAC, the public defense community. And the goal of that committee is really to provide information as to best practices for communities when they're looking at their pretrial practices. And we always encourage folks that are interested in that subject to familiarize themselves with the work of the committee and the goal really to foster public safety, but community well-being as well. So appreciate your update. As always, ma'am, we appreciate your attendance at these meetings. Anything else on this subject?
Justice Goff, could I comment on the close relative issue?
Sure. Yeah, please.
And I think this is another thing that you always worry about with legislation is the violation of that law of unintended consequences. And so, in this case, if the close relative were to become law, then who figures that out? I mean, I think that's the legislation doesn't really specify that. And so as I think most of us know here, bail is usually posted two places, either at the jail or at the clerk's office. And so what this means is that if only close relatives can post bail, then either the sheriff's staff or the clerk staff is going to have to figure out if someone is a close relative. How do you prove that? How can you prove that you're a close relative? Is it just because you have the same last name, or what if you have a different last name? It's so there's a whole sort of practical impediment to the application of this statute that's really going to present a burden on clerks and on sheriffs. Now, obviously Judges Association, we don't jump into that whole issue. It's more of a clerk's issue and a sheriff's issue, other than to point out that implementing this in the real world is going to be very difficult. And so perhaps we shouldn't enact things that are going to make things difficult on our justice partners in the real world. So I guess I would just make that point with regards to that. I think Representative Hatcher's comments are well taken.
Yeah, and if I could just add one more thing, the issue, and of course, though, just the practical side of it, of course, is an issue, procedural and practical side of it. But the other part is, when did the legislature get into the business of saying who could bail who out? It's almost like we're questioning the judges, because we know that there's certainly a group of people who, even if the bail was $250, they wouldn't be bailing out. And so if the legislature gets into this idea of who can bail who out, and we're saying it's only family members and not these outside organizations or any other relative or friend or whatever, then it's almost like we're second guessing not only the judges, but then we're also saying we know that this family probably can't post any kind of bail anyway. And so even though the judge has given them a bail, we know that they're not going to be able to bail out now. So I think it's I don't know what to call it. It's almost like a check on the judiciary in a way that has been legislated now. And so I think what we've heard from these organizations in our committees is that they really do, they just don't bail anybody out. They do a really deep search to figure out if this is somebody who can be bailed out and be trusted to come back, bailed out and trusted to not commit any additional offenses while they're out. So, I'm not sure why this is an issue. I think they brought up one time when one of these organizations bailed someone out and they went on to commit another offense, a violent offense. But they could only point to one situation that happened in. And so I don't know. It was just weird. That's the best word I have for it. Weird to me that that's what we were hearing that day in committee.
Well, thanks to both of you for your reports. Michael, I saw that you had your hand up earlier. Was there something you wanted to add?
I was just going to echo the same concerns that we heard. The other unintended consequences of the possibility of prosecuting people who claim to be a relative, and there's a dispute about whether they are or not. And so we're looking at further prosecution of people who are just attempting to help close friends or people they consider as a sibling or what have you. And then all the other problems that those two bills bring, which is people being held without a bond for a period of time, mandatory minimum bonds based solely on the charge, and you could just line them up. But we are very concerned about those, and we're watching them as well. There's two bills, Representative Hatcher, that are kind of passing through the houses that would also affect that organization in Marion County. So we're keeping an eye on both of those as well.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Justice Goff, this is Troy Hatfield from the Probation Officers Association. And, I would echo the comments that were made on Senate Bill 6, especially about how, it restricts a lot of the local decisions and could hamper a lot of the pretrial efforts that our local counties are doing and making great strides in across the state. But two other bills were mentioned earlier that I wanted to comment on real quick, and one was 1004. And in that bill, there's a definition change or an addition to the definition in terms of a community corrections program. And in that, and it also talks a little bit about credit time. Within that definition, basically it includes a couple of community corrections programs like day treatment and day reporting that will also then allow for accrued and good time credit for those two programs. Now, in that in that that bill is slightly problematic with that, because typically credit time would be given to those who are confined or in some type of restricted liberty within the community, whether that's a work release program or on electronic monitoring, home detention. And day reporting and day treatment are typically not two programs that restrict liberty at all. And we would be treating participants in those two kind of different community programs the same. Those who are in work release, getting the, and those who are in day reporting getting the exact same credit time, although one has significant restrictions on their liberty and the other one doesn't. Just kind of wanted to point that out. And then Senate Bill 9, that puts in electronic monitoring standards across the state. We do a lot of supervision for people on electronic monitoring, and we're not opposed to having standards that will help guide, what we are doing locally. However, with what's being proposed, it's not being proposed with any kind of additional resources. So what may end up happening, and if you look at the fiscal note that was created on that, I know Mark Goodpaster kind of put out a survey. He asked our organization to, as many members across the state, to kind of fill that out to see where we're at now in terms of whether we could meet those standards. There's a significant number of local agencies that cannot. And if we're putting those in place without any kind of resources behind that, it's going to be very, very difficult to implement those things in the bill the way it's intended in the bill. And if we're not able to implement it, I fear that we're not going to be able to accommodate as many people on community supervision as the courts would like, or that are appropriate to be in our community. And what might end up happening, or in the consequences, more people might be locally incarcerated when they could safely be maintained in the community. And I think that could create problems as well.
Well, Troy, your insight is always welcome and appreciated as well. And I think Chris Cunningham from Grant County observed in a meeting 6 or 8 months ago that he, and I think a lot of other smart folks that do this every day, oftentimes look at the existing rules and figure out a way to get it done. And it can certainly present problems when the rules change without having some of these things in mind. So has Popeye had the opportunity, has anybody come and testified during these hearings about those concerns?
No, we do plan to, as the bills have moved into the second house and moved forward. Kind of wanted to see what amendments were being proposed. I know IACAC had worked a lot with on Senate Bill 9, and want to give the opportunity to see how that turned out. But we do plan to, as these bills move forward in the next house.
Thank you.
Justice Goff?
Yes.
Bill Watson.
Hi, Bill.
Troy and I've talked several times about Senate Bill 9 and the concerns. Definitely the fiscal impact at the local level with this bill will be much larger than people are even anticipating at this point. As Troy said, counties that can't meet the fiscal impact are going to reduce the number of people they take into their electronic monitoring programs, which in turn is going to send those people, the higher level felons are going to go to the Department of Corrections, sit in the county jails for a long period of time waiting to go to the Department of Corrections, because communities that don't have the financial resources are going to cap their numbers in those programs. And those violent felons have to go somewhere, and they're no longer going to come into our programs. They're going to go to the DOC for sure, especially the smaller communities where resources are tough already. And in some of these communities, these are communities that are following the current guidelines in code on how to monitor violent offenders. They monitor according to the Violent Offender Code already, but these caps will continue to reduce that if there's not resources for staffing and those types of things. We did have conversations with Senator Walker. IACAC did. We talked with him a couple of times, and he was very receptive to our discussions. And he actually made some changes based on our concerns during our discussions with him as well. So we're not against standards. No one's against standards at all. I think standards are needed to ensure that we do quality work. We just have fears about the fiscal impact at the local levels, for sure, from a bill like this. And as Troy said, we've had discussions several times together. And as he said, we figure we've got some things that made it a little more plausible for us. But as it moves to the House, there's still some other issues we would like to try to address as it moves over there, as Troy talked about. IACAC and Popeye kind of trying to combine resources on that.
Thank you for that, Bill. Anything else on this topic from members?
Justice Goff, I imagine, and Kristen might be able to talk better about this, I'd imagine parole might have a fiscal impact from this as well. So that might be pointed out.
Judge Spitzer, they would. In fact, Deputy Commissioner Basinger and I had a conversation about the bill recently. He called me and asked me to help to ensure that he was understanding it the way he thought it was. And we talked about it at great length. And he said it would definitely have an impact on parole for sure.
Yeah.
I just want to, as they come to the House, if there are some amendments that I might be able to throw out there as they come through committee, because they should come through courts and criminal code, I guess. Please let me know, and I can at least try to push those forward in committee before they get to the House floor.
Thank you, Representative Hatcher. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
I just wanted to weigh in that, yes, there would be a fiscal impact on parole. And as DOC has discussed in other meetings, priorities for programming by community corrections and advisory boards and local JRACs is critical, as is the collaboration. So this is one that we too are watching very closely.
Right. Well, it's a great discussion, and it's hard to keep up with these things because of the accelerated schedule and the frequency with which we meet. But I don't want to cut off discussion either. If there's anything else that needs to be brought to the group's attention, please feel free to chime in. If there's not, I'm going to transition out of the legislative update into requests for member reports. I know that there was something circulated prior to the meeting, Dr. Doss, that we did not get included in the package distributed to members, and that was an update on the DOC mission statement. I want to give you an opportunity to say a few words about that if you'd like, and we can certainly share a screen so that the members can have an opportunity to look at that. Would you like to say a few words about that, ma'am?
Sure, thank you. And I'm excited to be part of the group again today on behalf of Commissioner Carter. Indiana Department of Correction is really excited, and I am proud to announce that we've updated our mission and vision statement for the department in the spirit of evidence-based decision-making and strategies to better serve those who are incarcerated with us and prepare them to be our neighbors when they release. We have moved away from language that regards to people as offenders, as parolees, and are moving to language that incorporates and embodies the wholeness of incarcerated individuals, and actually including the language of those individuals. So instead of offenders, we're saying incarcerated individuals. Instead of parolees, we are referring to people as released citizens. And we are really hoping that this holistic approach will have an impact on those that we serve and how we work with them. So I wanted to share that with the group here. I think it is a really big thing, and I want to applaud all of those in the department who really championed this idea, including Commissioner Carter, to make this happen. So thank you.
Dr. Doss, thank you.
I have a couple other updates, Justice Goff, if you want me to.
Yeah,
finish.
please.
Okay. I also just wanted to share with the group our SRS deployment. So thanks to our partnership with Court Technology, SRS, the case management system was deployed to all community correction agencies, which was very exciting and a huge milestone for data collection in this space. This month's population report will be the first time that we will utilize data directly from SRS for community corrections that is not self-reported, thus creating more accurate and timely information. So with that being said, we are anticipating that there could be a potential change to the numbers as we move from self-reported to unified data directly from SRS. We will keep y'all updated on any drastic changes, and we'll explain the report and explain in the report any major population shifts. But overall, any change will be good and will justify our need for SRS in the first place. So I'm excited to share that update. And then lastly, I'll just add that COVID-19, our trends statewide and within the department and our local jails continue to trend down. So I am cautiously optimistic that we'll see this continue in the months ahead. So the department, we are working on a sustainability plan so that we continue to respond to any infectious disease that's in our facilities, while also making sure that we continue to do all the other work in healthcare and all of that we do. So looking forward to that. We are also going to be having a call with the Indiana Sheriff's Association and local sheriffs and localities around COVID-19 and kind of getting out of this emergency role that we've been in for the last 2 years. And that will be occurring this next Tuesday, so February 15th. And that's all the updates I have for the department. Thank you.
Oh, Dr. Doss, thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. Doss? We have, I see, Steve, you have your hand up, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to compliment Dr. Doss and DOC on the forward-thinking way that they are looking at things. I'm not really a big person that likes to spend time on strategic planning, but I think the focus on reentry is critical. And I can't tell you how many times I have been frustrated in legislative hearings with DOC where they say our only job is to house people in corrections. And so I know Dr. Doss has been a key part of making that change, but all of DOC, I think that's a big difference, and we should all recognize it and be supportive of it.
Well, thank you, Steve. Absolutely. There anything else? Dr. Doss, I would echo that the approach that the DOC has taken to being open with its communications and being engaged throughout the duration of the pandemic has been invaluable to the function of the judiciary. When everything started, the fact that you all were as helpful as you were to communities as they were trying to keep their inmate population safe, as they were trying to be responsible in looking at the numbers of folks who were jailed. I can just tell you that those things couldn't have been done as successfully as they were without the engagement of the Department of Corrections, and you were really instrumental in that. So I echo what Steve said. I just want to thank you. Michael.
I want to say thank you too. I think it doesn't seem like a big change to some people, but that changing of the name, referring to people as people first, and then they're where they are is a huge deal. I worked for a long time in the disability community, and that was a long fight to change the terms that people refer to people with disabilities as people with disabilities or whatever the disability is. I really applaud that. That's was a surprise to me, and I think that's just fantastic. I want to thank you from public defender side.
Thank you, Michael. Judge Spitzer.
I think maybe one of the other things that struck me as I was thinking of, just pulled up Indiana Constitution, Article 1, Section 18, that says the penal code shall be founded on the principles of reformation and not of vindictive justice. And so I think in terms of a mission statement for our state, you know, the best source of that's our Constitution, and this seems to be completely consistent with that. And so, you know, I think having alignment with those purposes, I think is really important.
Absolutely. Are there any other report outs from member agencies or Mary Kay? Good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to bring your attention to the two of the documents that were included in the meeting materials today. They are reports on pretrial outcomes from Grant County and from Monroe County. These are two examples of counties who are really doing a fantastic job with their data collection and analysis and really review of their local outcomes relative to evidence-based pretrial practices. So I know there's been some interest in seeing what some of the counties are seeing on their pretrial outcomes. We'll continue to provide additional information as it's available. For counties who are seeking to become a certified pretrial services program, there are some annual reporting requirements for data around some of these outcomes. I know that the pretrial committee is still working on finalizing some of those. And as Dr. Doss mentioned, we do have counties using SRS. And so there will be some ability for us in the future to pull some centralized data regarding pretrial. And then the other update I wanted to give is that I know at a previous meeting, this group had talked about having our Office of Court Technology present on this status update on the building of the jail management system. They are getting closer to being able to have something to demo. So I just wanted to let everybody know that we haven't forgotten about that. We'll get that on the agenda for a future meeting to talk about or to present some functionality to you for the JMS. And that's all my report, Justice Goff.
Mary Kay, thank you for that. Thank you for that important update and all you do. Anything else?
Justice Goff, I just wanted to mention Angie in her report had mentioned the community coalition grants. And that's something that we announced this week in partnership with the Division of Mental Health and Addiction. And those grants are funded through the Governor's Next Level Recovery Initiative. And thanks to Mary Kay and her team for helping us work through the RFF process. But simply put, these dollars are targeted toward funding personnel to manage and organize a lot of the initiatives relating to access to treatment for people with substance use disorder and mental health. So as our local JRACs, our local coalitions, and other collaborations that we have going on at the local level, we know there's a lot of money. There's a lot of things that we're asking for, and this is to help them, provide them with the people. Also, it can be used to provide some gap analysis and system mapping resources as well. So I'm kind of trying to put some people behind the technical assistance piece. Applications are due February 11th. It is a quick turnaround, but we know there's a number of communities and organizations out there that are in dire need of assistance to make sure we get this work done. So thank you.
And Doug, thank you. When that announcement was made, or a couple of days before it, was an email circulated to the chief, and I can just tell you that's just it's incredible. It's a game changer for so many communities, and so we're so thankful to your office and to the governor for making those funds available. I think they're going to be critical to the success of our local JRAC efforts. So appreciate that update and appreciate your willingness to partner.
Justice Goff, could I ask a question about that?
Please, Andrew.
I did see that announcement. And I think it's fantastic because I had thought that the local JRACs would need a little assistance to get the ball rolling. But then I'd ask a couple questions about that. So just from a procedural standpoint, it's maybe just because I haven't been involved. Is there a local contact in every county for these JRAC boards that we've established? In other words, I don't need to be circulating this amongst the public defense community and asking them to find someone to apply for this grant. Is there a local person in every county who is really going to have the opportunity to apply for that and get that rolling?
Yeah, the answer to your question, it's a great one, is yes. And communities some are more responsive than others, but there is a comprehensive list that is, as we speak, being assembled by Angie and her team for posting on the local JRAC website. And that point of contact is, really designed to do just what you asked, to make that person aware of resources that are available from our various constituent groups that might be utilized and implemented to meet the needs of any community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Spitzer.
Thank you, Justice Goff, and I apologize for talking so much in this meeting, but
No, please.
We talked about funding and we talked about pretrial, and I think this year we've seen a situation where the funding that we had for pretrial initiatives has not been adequate to fully fund all of the pretrial efforts. That's a good thing, because so many counties are stepping up to this challenge to get to work on these issues and to do pretrial better in their counties. But of course, it's not a good thing from the standpoint of, really, if we want to see it continue to grow, it needs to be fully funded. So I know we've got legislators that are here, and thank you for that and listening in. But as we see counties continuing to come online and say, I want to do evidence-based pretrial, I want to do pretrial the best way, I want to, sort of implement all of the research and work that we've been doing and make it work better in their county, that having the willingness to fund those efforts is going to be extremely important. And this is pretrial, so it directly impacts public safety. And so, I'd encourage those that have the ability to do that, that we can pump up funding for these pretrial efforts, because I think it's really important for public safety and, for us just kind of doing the right thing. So.
Thank you, Judge.
Justice Goff, if I could, Doug had brought up the grants that are out and due, and some of the purpose of the grant is to help provide, resources and personnel on the local level to kind of move things forward. And one quick question that I have, coming from a local perspective, there's sometimes hesitation to hire for local personnel when a grant is time limited, because there may not be resources to continue that person going in the future. Do you know if this might be evaluated sometime down the road to see how well it's doing, to whether or not there might be renewed funding after that 16-month period? Any indication of that as a possibility?
Yeah, so we actually, the grant cycle is 16 months. That puts us squarely kind of in the next budget year, which we are budgeting to continue those for. What we have generally done on some of these other coordination grants where we've had people is we'll look at the kind of the first cohort that we have funded, see what projects, what progress is being made, and then make any adjustments that we need. And generally what we try to do then is also expand the opportunity to other communities. We know that not everybody is going to be ready right now, but I believe we have some communities that are really ready for help. And some of these, there are people already doing this work, but they're unable to do this full time. And this would allow that sort of shifting of resources and backfilling some positions as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Anything else? Any other report outs?
Justice Goff.
Hi, David. Good morning.
Dave Waldorf, Association of Counties. I was a few minutes late, and I do have to jump off for the clock. But we've talked in the past with this group about the opioid settlement money and trying, at least for me, trying to figure out a way to get the units who opted out to opt back in. And there was a bill that passed the House, 1193. So we're working on that still. There's a lot of different groups we have to try to satisfy with that, but we're at least happy there's a bill that's passed the House, and trying to make sure we get those units who opted out to opt back in, give them an incentive to do that, but then also make sure the money gets spent to the best for taxpayers. And so I do think the local JRACs might keep that in the back of their minds too, as some additional money that may come in for pretrial or diversion programs or mental health and addiction services. So it's House Bill 1193.
David, always appreciate your input, and I'd like to circle back with you, someone from your office, so that we can make sure that we get those details available and perhaps published on the website, so that if a community does have interest, that they don't miss that opportunity. But thank you for that. I think that would help a lot of people.
Again, I'm sorry I have to drop off. So
understood. All right. See you soon.
Yes.
Any other report outs?
Yes, Justice Goff.
Chris, good morning. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Judge Spitzer raises a really good point about planning for the funding for pretrial services and other needs. And I was thinking that was part of one of the many things Mimi is working on. I was thinking, kind of that needs analysis for statewide resources, but the, it's the timing is now getting ready for next year's budget session. So I'm glad that that's on our radar.
Chris, I appreciate you bringing in. I don't want to shorten discussion. We've moved along the agenda pretty expediently, but just kind of tying in all of the discussions today. You and I have had, along with Bernice, some discussions about the need to increase funding opportunities for communities and the need to provide more efficient streams on perhaps, if not a centralized basis, a more regionalized basis for our communities as they look to meet their public safety needs. I just want to acknowledge that I think is an important component of the work that's being done with the local JRAC work group. As you mentioned, one of the things that Mimi is trying to help us develop so that our communities have an efficient and streamlined way to meet those needs. I kind of want to make this group aware of another discussion that's happening within the judicial community itself. And Judge Spitzer is also co-chair of our strategic planning committee, which is a group of trial judges that are charged really with looking at the practices of the judiciary statewide. And they've published a paper among the judiciary that indicates that there needs to be a more centralized funding in order to have more equal access to justice throughout the state. And he's been leading some conversations with the members of that committee about the possibility of realigning our administrative districts among our trial judges to more closely align with our non-judicial justice partners, so that there could be a more accurate view of what the financial needs, what the human service needs, what the needs are of our communities in our different regions of the state. One of the challenges we have as a judicial branch is that we're a non-unified court system. And so that's a good thing if you can get buy-in to a concept, because everybody really has to buy in, but it's a very difficult thing when you're trying to arrive at consensus as we do, especially when you have to partner with two branches of government. One's here all the time, and so we can call Doug and Jay and those folks and talk to them. But we have Senator Pohl and Representative Hatcher here just part-time, so it's hard for everybody to get on the same page. But that's my long-winded way of saying thank you for bringing that up and make sure that I stay to task. And Senator Pohl, as you continue your work, and Representative Hatcher, please continue to engage us, because the concerns that were brought up by these folks who are our best and brightest, are statewide leaders in their various areas of the justice system, when they have concerns about legislation, they recognize that the work of the legislature is critically important to our state. But we want to be good partners with the legislature, and everything that we have as the judicial branch, everything we have as justice partners is really available to you and your colleagues as you go through and you do the important work of the people. So we are interested in developing a justice system that works for everybody, one that is viewed as fair and effective, keeping our communities safe. So thank you for being here today.
Justice Goff, if I could just mention real quick, I'm incredibly honored to be a part of this group. I mean, it's very, very impressive that that you guys were able to pull everybody from pretty much every aspect of the judiciary and all of the related agencies together. And I had a conversation with after the first meeting, I had a conversation with Senator Talion and just said how impressed I was with it. And she said, "Oh, some of your best ideas for legislation will come out of that group." So,
yeah, I think she's right. These folks, they know what they're doing. So thank you for being here, sir. Anything else?
Justice, this is Chris again. I was also just going to note yesterday the Supreme Court issued an opinion in DeWeese versus State. And it addressed pretrial issues in Criminal Rule 26, and I'm optimistic this will have an impact. And we've heard feedback from prosecutors already saying that the opinion will have a positive impact in their communities and help provide clarity. So just wanted to note that for everyone if folks hadn't seen that.
Thank you, Chris. Well, yeah, it's truly my honor. I'm just Chris from Wabash to get to come down and work with you all on issues of importance to the state. It's really it's quite the honor. So I hope that you have a safe weekend. Is there anything else in terms of other business? Well, hearing none, our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, March 11th from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That meeting is currently scheduled to be held in person in the Office of Judicial Administration conference rooms, but it may be reassessed based on health conditions and if the governor's public health emergency executive order is needed to be extended past March 4th. But in any event, information will be provided as we get closer to the meeting date. Last call, any other business? Well, hearing none, thank you again, and hope everyone has a great weekend. Take care, everybody.